Hey guys, I got this great business idea. Hear me out, okay? So, how about we have this place where people can come in and eat, and once they eat, they pay a small bribe to their server so that they can not spit in their food. And then that way, you can get the customers to pay the majority of the wage of the servers, and then we can just reap the benefits of serving the food. I think it's a great business idea. Like, it's a place where people can come in and rest. So, I think, what should we call it? Rest. A restaurant. Restaurant. That's a great idea. I'm pretty sure that's never been done before in the history of humanity. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back. So today we're going through 5 financial mistakes that I've made in my life. So I understand that this is YouTube after all, and on YouTube you guys don't want to hear about my financial successes. You guys want to hear about my mistakes, right? You guys want to know all the ways that I've messed up. Well, joke's on you. I'm going to flip the game on you and proactively answer the question on what's my biggest financial mistakes that I've made in my life. But before we begin, you guys know what time it is. Yeah, that's right. Quarantine memes. Let's go. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Without further ado, let's jump right into my financial mistakes. So number one is be sure to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. But seriously though, smash that like button. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm and it helps this channel to grow. But in all seriousness, the first mistake is getting a part-time job. Now, I know that's going to come as a bit of a surprise to some of you because you think, oh, why would getting a part time job be a financial mistake? Shouldn't it earn you more money? And yeah, on the surface, that does appear to be the case. But let me explain the context of the situation. So, this was me back in high school. And back in high school, all my friends were getting part time jobs and making the minimum wage, which was around $10 per hour Canadian, which is a very small amount of money, as you guys can imagine. But, some of my friends who are working at, let's say, McDonald's, most of them worked at the McDonald's, and a lot of them worked at McDonald's, and they were making $10 an hour, and it was a decent income for them as high school students. So some of you might not be familiar with the way that Ontario high school and elementary school systems work. So in elementary school runs from grade 1 to 8, and high school runs from grade 9 to 12. And then after grade 12, you can choose to go to college or university, or you can just jump right into an apprenticeship and jump right into work if you want to. So I got a part-time job at the same time that I was applying for university because I was planning on going to university. So this was right around the end of grade 11, going on to grade 12 where I was applying. And now I got a job at a grocery chain known as Longo's here in Southern Ontario. So if you guys don't know Longo's, they're a very fancy Italian themed grocery store, and I worked at the meat counter. So what would happen is that all the butchers would just chop up all the meats, right? And then there would be blood and guts everywhere. And my job is to just clean everything up and sanitize everything at the end of each night. So that was my job, and it was kind of fun because I could just plug my headphones in and tune everything out. But it's just physical work, right? So it took a really long time to do, and it really took a lot out of me. And by the time I got home, it would be like 10 or 11 at night when the store finally closes. And I would be like too tired to do homework or anything like that, right? So it's a financial mistake because at the end of the day, my grades took a hit. And I realized this very soon because I quit after only like 2 months because I couldn't take it anymore, right? Because I was trying to juggle being a top A-list student, trying to make it into the best universities and working a part-time job at the time. And I'm weak, so I couldn't do it. So that was a financial mistake because I feel like it might have impacted my opportunities further on in the future, right? So you can make the argument that if I hadn't got a part-time job and earned those $10 per hour, I could have spent all that time working on my homework and working on academics, and that would have gotten me into a better university or something like that, right? You never know. So I know this one's kind of hard because it's kind of difficult to imagine what life could have been if I had gone into a different university. So I applied to Waterloo, I applied to Queen's, and I applied to McMaster. So I only got accepted to Waterloo, which is where I ended up going to school. And I got rejected from Queens and McMaster. So, you could make the argument that maybe if I had tried a little harder at school and not gotten that part-time job at that critical stage of my life, I could have made it to Queens or McMaster, or I don't know. You never know. So yeah, I've considered that a financial mistake because at the time I was too focused on making that short-term gains of making that $10 per hour, but I didn't think of the opportunities ahead of me or what I could have done if I had just focused my attention and time on other things that could have potentially paid out more money in the end. I'm not saying that necessarily you have to make it into Queens or make it into McMaster or make it into whatever Harvard or Yale or something in order to be successful and make a lot of money. But if you just kept in mind all the bigger gains that you could have down in the future instead of focusing on making that $10 per hour or something like that, then you might be better off in the future. So that's number one. And number two is chasing the trends. So I got actually another story for this. So the story for this is back in elementary school in grade 8, I wanted a MacBook really badly. Now it's a bit weird why I would want a MacBook because I primarily use my laptop for school purposes or for gaming, which, for gaming, Macs are not known to be the best gaming machines, right? And Macs tend to be, even at the time, twice as expensive as an equivalent spec PC or even more. So I think in retrospect, I would have been better off if I had just gotten a PC. But I really wanted to get a Mac because that's what all my friends were getting. And that's what all the trends are pointing to online and on YouTube and stuff like that. All the cool kids have Macs, right? So I really wanted a Mac. So my dad got me a Mac. And it was $2,500, which was a lot of money. This was back in like 2008, by the way. So, $2,500 was a lot of money back in 2008. I mean, it's still a lot of money now. So I got the MacBook and I have it sitting on my desk and it looks so nice, right? It's just, I got the aluminum one and it looks amazing. It was one of the first aluminum MacBooks that ever came out. And it looks absolutely fantastic. But what I quickly realized is that it couldn't play any games that I wanted to play because all the games that I wanted to play were only compatible with Windows and it wouldn't run on this Mac. And also, I didn't even have Microsoft Office installed because usually what would happen is that if you buy a PC, it comes with Microsoft Office. At least that was the case at the time. But since I bought a Mac, it didn't come with Microsoft Office. So I didn't even have all the tools I need for school and stuff like that. So it was just a disaster in my opinion because the specs were kind of low and it was too slow to run even a lot of games that were compatible with Mac. And I just ended up using it to browse the web and maybe play the occasional Minecraft from time to time. But I could have spent half the money and had a better time using it for my purposes that I was intending on using it for. So the lesson learned is that I'm sure a lot of you value your Macs and you would never think about switching to PC. But I'm just saying that for me, in that particular instance, back when I was in grade 8 or grade 9, that particular incident, I would have been much better off if I had saved a lot of money by buying a PC and would have been better off using it for the things that I needed to use it for. So that's a lesson learned that I realized I wanted a Mac just because I wanted to chase the trend, not because it actually would have been better for my use case. So that's another mistake that I've made and a lesson learned from that. So that's number 2. Now moving on to number 3, which is spending money to impress people. Now this is another story that might be a bit cringeworthy. So back in first year of university, there was this girl I liked in one of my math classes. And in order to impress her, I asked her out for this fancy dinner at this fancy steakhouse that I obviously couldn't afford. So I had about $200 in my bank account, and a dinner at that place for 2 people would have probably been $200. So I asked her out, and it was pretty clear and obvious to her that I was just spending money to impress her, right? Because I had come from, well, I still am coming from an immigrant family who's, lower middle class or just middle class. And I was funding my way through university through primarily loans. So that $200 that I had in my account, yeah, that was all student loans. So I had no income. I had no job when I was in first year. And I just quit my job at Longos, remember? So, yeah, I had no job. and I had no income, and I was just living off of student loans. And here I was spending the last $200 I have on a fancy dinner. So yeah, number one, that was really obvious that I was just trying to impress her. And number two, she wasn't that into me anyways. So maybe thankfully, in retrospect, that dinner never ended up happening, and that was sort of a saving grace for me. So I ended up saving that $200. But a lesson that I learned from this is that you shouldn't never try to spend money to impress people, because number one, it might not work, right? So in my case, it didn't work in the first place. And number two, even if it does work, then you'll end up with relationships or even just friendships with people that you don't really value, that don't really value you for who you are. Then they just like you for your money, right? So you're always going to end up in a bad situation if you spend money to impress people. So I think that that's a huge financial mistake that a lot of people make, especially if you come into new wealth, right? So if you win the lottery or something, you everyone all of a sudden loves you, right? But do they love you for who you are, or do they just love you because you have a lot of money now that you can spend on them? So yeah, lesson learned: don't try to spend money to impress people. It never works. It's always a bad situation. So that's financial mistake number three. Now, moving on to financial mistake number four, which is not getting into investing sooner. Now, I know I always tell you guys that I started investing when I was 18, and I tell all my friends that, when I was 18 years old, I walked into a RBC branch and opened up my first direct investing account. And I've been investing ever since, which is true. But what I didn't tell you guys until I guess now is that when I was 18, I invested some money and I just kind of left my account there and never touched it until I was like maybe like 22 years old. So I like left it completely. I just forgotten it, and there was maybe $1,000 in there, and it was just kept in cash, and I just didn't really do anything with it for like 4 years, and it was just sitting there doing nothing. So I only started getting really into investing about maybe like 2 3 years ago. So that's a confession that I just made for you guys. So my huge stock portfolio that I've built up, well, that only happened in the span of 2 years or 3 years. But my point that I'm trying to get at is that if I had actually taken investing seriously right when I turned 18, my stock portfolio would be a lot bigger than it is now, right? Because if you look at a stock chart of the stock market performance in the past, I don't know, like 6 7 years, and you just look at how much the stock market has gone up by, I probably could have bought just about anything. And as long as that company didn't go bankrupt, I would have made a lot of money. So I think I could have a lot more money than I do now if I had taken investing seriously right from the get-go and right from when I turned 18. So that's financial mistake number four. And finally, let's move on to financial mistake number five, which is spending too much money on food. Now, I know this one is kind of strange, right? Because you think, oh, I have to spend money on food, right? I have to eat. Well, this is true, but the way that I was spending money on food is far above the necessity and far into the realm of luxury. So I'll give you an example. So back in high school, there was a Wendy's right across the street. From where my school was, and I go there for lunch every day. And number one, this is not the healthiest way to live your life, eating Wendy's every day, first of all. And second of all, it was a lot more expensive than if I had just brought food from home, right? So I could have easily brought food from home, and I would have saved all my money instead of spending it on Wendy's, and it would have been like half the cost or even less. So that's a lesson learned that I wasted a lot of money on food now that I think about it. Just because if you think about how many times I would go to like restaurants, even back when I was in high school, or just generally wasting money on food. A bubble tea here, coffee here, even those like drinks and stuff like that. And funny story, I was delivering for Uber Eats maybe just a couple months ago before the whole like Roni situation happened. And I was delivering, and somebody ordered a bubble tea from Cha Time, which is a pretty famous bubble tea chain here in Ontario. So somebody ordered a bubble tea from Cha Time, and the bubble tea itself was $6. But the kicker is that the delivery fee on that Uber Eats order on that bubble tea was $7. So if you're keeping track at home, that delivery fee actually costs them more than the bubble tea itself. Now, I guess that person really wanted bubble tea. Who am I to judge, right? It tastes great. But my point is that you should really watch out for how much money you're spending on food, because even though it's a small amount of money, it really does add up. And that's a mistake that I've made consistently and repeatedly for as long as I can remember. So yeah, I mean, I really gotta do better on this end, and that's something that I could definitely work on improving. And if anything I suggest it applies to you, maybe my suggestion to you is you can look into auditing your food expenses a little bit better too. So the goal is to save more money and invest it. So I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but that's what I always suggest, right? Just save all those small unnecessary spendings and then just devote it all to stocks or investments or whatever, or crypto. I don't know, Dogecoin. That video tended to do really popular. So I don't know, you can throw it all into Dogecoin if you want to, although that's not really suggested. But yeah, save the money and invest it. That's going to be my mantra. So I'll leave it there. Anyways, this video is getting a little long, so I'm going to leave it here. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'll leave the links down below in the description. And don't forget to smash the like button if you haven't already. And yeah, consider subscribing if you like this series. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye. Not gotten that part-time job at that critical stage of my life, I could have made it